the republic, which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Clerk, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Burnett,
Present.
Mr. Camacho, Mr. Goldstein,
Here.
Ms. Najolski Eichner,
Present.
Ms. Smith,
Here,
Ms. Ayers,
Here.
Mr. Uvelman,
Present.
Ms. Revoluz,
Here.
Ms. Young,
Here.
Mr. Kites,
Here.
Ms. McMurr, Ms. Alterman,
Here.
Mr. Meek, Mr. Livingston,
Here.
Ms. Shanahan.
here,
12, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 28th, 2023. Do I have a motion? For Ms. Shanahan, any corrections, deletions, omissions? I see no hands raised. So all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted? Any in opposition? Ms. Nora Najolski Eichner, you're in opposition?
No, sorry, my reactions appear frozen. I was saying aye.
Okay. All right, and those who are not displaying themselves, for lack of a better term, if when we have a vote, could you raise your hands electronically so I can count them? Otherwise, it doesn't look like you voted. So I see no opposition. So the minutes of the regular meeting of February 28th are accepted. Next, we have public participation. Do we have anybody who is wants to address the council? Do we have anybody online that wants to address the council?
I believe nobody is raising their hands.
Okay, I'll ask one more time. Anybody that from the public that wishes to address the council, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, we will move on. Resignations and appointments. Appointments, we are making 2 appointments tonight to the Board of Assessment Appeals as an alternate, one being Megan Douglas and one being Harriet Petrides. Do I have a motion? Mr. Livingston moves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to nominate Megan Douglas and Harriet Petrides to the Board of Assessment Appeals as alternates. Both are seasoned real estate professionals who understand and know the Norwalk market. And I'll note it's particularly important appointments as we go through the revaluation process. So I strongly support their nomination.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Looks like it's unanimous. Any opposed? Okay, no abstentions. Thank you and congratulations. A reappointment to Mr. John Bovee, Water Pollution Control. Do I have a motion? Ms. Smith.
yes, Mayor, thank you. I'd like to move the reappointment of John Bovee to the Water Pollution Control Authority. I've had the pleasure of serving with him since I joined the WPCA myself just a little over a year ago. Mr. Bovee is a longtime Norwalk resident and a lawyer. His practice focuses on real estate matters, and he has an expertise in environmental reviews and construction agreements, also compliance relative to waterfront construction and general land use and development, which of course brings a lot to the WPCA. He also has been very involved in Norwalk serving as general counsel to the Norwalk 3rd Taxing District, and also has just completed a term as Commodore of the South Norwalk Boat Club. Aside from his dedication to Norwalk and the WPCA, he's an all-around nice guy with great taste in food. Just had to add that personal note. And I thank him very much for his willingness to continue to serve.
Thank you. Any further comment? All in favor? Mr. Evelus, Mr. Kites?
Trying to find buttons, sorry.
I have Mr. Evelus. Mr. Kites?
Yeah, I can't find the button either. Yes.
Okay. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And again, thank you to Mr. Bovee for his willingness to serve. Thank you. The next item is Mayor's remarks. The most important remark I've probably had this week is that March is Women's History Month. And it's time to honor all the contributions that women have made throughout American history. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring a week in March as National Women's History Week. Then in 1987, Congress passed a law that designated March as Women's History Month. And we're grateful that they did that. And I'm also very grateful to the women here in Norwalk who have volunteered to serve on the Women's Commission, on the Commission on the Status of Women. And while we have so much more work to do to create a just, equitable nation for women and girls, we are thankful to all the women in history who helped pave that way, because the women that were out front during women's suffrage movement, during other different movements that demanded equal rights for equal pay, comparable worth for women, they've always been out in the front. We thank them for their hard work. I know it can be very challenging, very frustrating, but I am very pleased that they were very persistent and kept things moving forward. So I appreciate that. Next, all of us this Friday will be Irish. I want to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. This past week, as Saturday, as you know, we had the Norwalk Emerald Society hosted the 2023 St. Patrick's Day Parade, which began in Veterans Park and went through Washington Street and beyond. And I think you all know where it ended. And it was a wonderful thing this year. I think it was a bigger parade with more people watching than they had in the past. This parade has gone back, I think, probably 6 years now. And it gets a little bit bigger every year. So thank you to the Emerald Society, and thank you to everybody who worked so hard to make the parade happen. Thank you. And I will turn it over to the council president.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For tonight, the consent calendar will be read by Council Member David Hooverman.
Thank you, President Burnett. 7A, Public Works Committee. 7A1, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Freightliner of Hartford for the purchase of one M2106 sign truck for an amount not to exceed $174,999.30. Account number noted. 7A2A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Burns Construction Company, Incorporated for Project PM 2023-1 Pavement Management Program for a sum not to exceed $2,478,440.89, with the option to extend this agreement for one additional term of 1 year. Account numbers noted. 7A2B, authorize the Chief of Operations and Public Works to execute orders on the contract with Burns Construction Company, Incorporated for Project PM 2023-1 Pavement Management Program for a sum not to exceed $247,844.09. Account numbers noted. 7A3, Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with M&J Engineering PC to provide construction administration and inspection service for TMP West Avenue Traffic Adaptive System, project number 102364, for an amount not to exceed $59,843.36, account number noted. 7A4. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Fuss and O'Neill, M&J Engineering PC, to provide construction administration for service for TMP Phase 3 traffic signal upgrade, project number 102-374, for an amount not to exceed $15,000, account number noted. 7A5. Whereas pursuant to Public Act 16-4 MSS, Section 2A1, and 17-02, Section 378A1, for TOD and pre-development projects of the Connecticut General Assembly, the Connecticut Department of Economics and Community Development, through the power granted by the Office of Policy and Management, OPM, is authorized to extend financial assistance for projects under the TOD and pre-development program. And whereas it is desirable in the public interest that the city of Norwalk make an application to the state for $2 million in order to undertake the Pinnacle TOD infrastructure project and to execute an assistance agreement, now, therefore, be it resolved by the Common Council of the city of Norwalk, 1, that it is cognizant of the conditions and prerequisites, including the match obligations for the state financial assistance imposed by to Public Acts 16-4 MSS, Section 2A1, and 17-02, Section 378A1, for TOD and pre-development projects of the Connecticut General Assembly and the guidelines of the TOD and pre-development or responsible growth incentive fund program. 2, that the filing of an application for state financial assistance by City of Norwalk in an amount not to exceed $2 million and 0.01 is hereby approved, and the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, is directed to execute and file such application with the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, to provide such additional information to execute such other documents as may be required to execute an assistance agreement with the state of Connecticut for state financial assistance if such an agreement is offered, to execute any amendments, decisions, and revisions thereto, and to act as the authorized representative of the city of Norwalk. 3, that it agrees to fulfill the 55% local cash match as presented in the application submitted by the city of Norwalk to the OPM in response for the competitive request for applications for the TOD and Responsible Growth Incentive Fund program, and to complete the project as specified in OPM's award letter and scope of work. Be it further resolved, 1, that the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency is approved as the implementing agency for the aforementioned state financial assistance in an amount not to exceed $2 million. 2, that the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, is directed to execute such agreements and other documents necessary to pass through the obligations of the assistance agreement entered into by and between the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development and the City of Norwalk onto the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency, if such an agreement is offered to the City of Norwalk, and to execute any amendments, decisions, and revisions thereto, and to act as the authorized representative of the City of Norwalk. 7B, Land Use and Management Committee. 7B1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an extension to the agreement with Norwalk Seaport Association Incorporated for the city to provide the association and their patrons with access to the Hope Dock at North Water Street parking lot from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024, all remaining terms of the agreement to remain unchanged. 7B2, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an amendment to the lease agreement with Norwalk Stamford Grassroots Tennis and Education Incorporated, aka Norwalk Grassroots Tennis Incorporated, for the use of the portable classrooms at Nathaniel Ely Center to extend the lease period to December 31st, 2028 at $1 per year. Grassroots shall continue to have full operating and capital improvement financial responsibilities over the leased premises. 7B3, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a short-term lease agreement with AmeriCare's Free Clinics Incorporated, an affiliate of AmeriCare Foundation Incorporated, for the continued use of a portion of 98 South Main Street to provide medical-related services to the community. Terms of the agreement shall be as outlined in Alan Lowe's memo dated February 24th, 2023. 7B4, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Integrated System Services, LLC, for the enhancement to school security, access control improvements at Brookside, Kendall, Silvermine, Tracy, and Wolf Pit Elementary Schools for a total not to exceed $157,205. Account noted. 7B5, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Omnidata for security camera improvement project at Brian McMahon and Norwalk High Schools, total not to exceed $80,000. Account number noted. 7B6A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Titan Enterprises Incorporated to provide interior renovations to the Sono Library for a total not to exceed $314,100. Funds are available from the following accounts: $12,344.29, Sono Repurposing Project, account number noted; $37,527.20, Sono Repurposing Project, account number noted; $164,752.51, Sono Repurposing Project, account number noted; $8,435, Sono Professional Painting Project, account number noted, and $941, account to be determined from the SNU Lighting Grant. 7B6B, authorize the library director to issue change orders on contract for a total not to exceed $43,196.49, account number noted. 7B7A, authorize the purchase agent to issue a purchase order with Silent Watchman Security Systems, LLC, to provide smoke detector head replacement at police headquarters for a total not to exceed $25,860, account number noted. 7B7B, authorize a contingency allowance for a total not to exceed $2,586, account noted. 7D, Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Affairs Committee. 7D1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into an agreement with Triangle Community Center for the use of Veterans Memorial Park and immediate surrounding grounds for their Pride in the Park event to be held on Saturday, June 10th, 2023, from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Setup time to begin on Saturday, June 10th, 2023 at 8 a.m. with teardown at 10 p.m. Rain date, Sunday, June 11th, 2023, approximately 6,000 people. 7D2, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to R&S Rentals and Sales in an amount not to exceed $36,140.11 for the purchase of a Kubota L4760HST tractor off Sourcewell contract 031121. Account number noted. 7F, Finance and Claims Committee. Accept and approve the report of the Claims Committee dated March 2023. 7E2, for information purposes only, narrative on tax collections dated March 2023. 7E3, for informational purposes only, monthly tax collectors reports dated February 2023. 7E4, resolution requesting for economic and community development ARPA projects in the aggregate amount of $260,000 from the ARPA American Rescue Plan Act Fund, accounts $180,000, account noted, economic and financial impact analysis, and $80,000 from account noted, Urban Land Institute Advisory Services Program. 7E5, Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all agreements and all and other documents necessary to transition from its current legal document management provider, WorldDocs, to acquiring company Net Documents. Year 1, $7,900.92. Year 2, $6,581.47. Year 3, $8,814.96. Account noted. 7E6, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an amendment agreement with Tyler Technologies for Tyler hosting and software as a service for the Munis Financials Human Capital Management Revenue and Productivity modules for the City and Board of Education for a 3-year renewal term for amounts as follows. Year 1, $323,144.85. Year 2, $323,144.85. And year 3, $323,144.85. Account number noted, IT software. And that is the end of the consent calendar for this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember David Hooverman. Your level of enthusiasm in reading the consent calendar is to be commended.
So
I've
sad
already
to
does it
not
all the
be,
time.
to not be
Can
in
we
the,
like make a motion to make him the permanent reader? I
Yes.
think we got a
yes.
majority for that one.
not gonna happen. I used to get $2.50 an hour for doing that. So.
That was fantastic.
$2.50, that's not too bad.
Okay, you have read the enthusiastic consent calendar for today, 2023. All those in favor show by a raise of hand or electronically raise of your hand. All those, any opposed or any abstentions? Seeing none, the consent calendar is passed. Back to you, Mayor Rilling.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. I felt like I was listening to a radio program. The voice and the enthusiasm and the inflection, everything was great. Thank you, Mr. Hooverman. Now, that brings us to item 7C1, Mr. Kites.
Thank you. Item C1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a contract for an affordable housing plan between the city of Norwalk and AKRF Inc. in the amount not to exceed $120,000. Account number noted. I'm just going to pass this on to the director of ECD department. Jessica, you with us tonight to give us an update and a little background on this?
Yeah, she's going back and forth between BET and us, so I think she's here.
Yes, good
Yes,
evening,
yes.
everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilmember Kites. We actually have the Director of Planning and Zoning on, who's going to talk a little bit about the affordable housing plan. But just to preempt Steve's presentation and discussion on the plan itself, we're really excited to be able to move this forward. We know that the plan of conservation development that was passed in December 2019 focused a lot on housing choice and healthy lifestyles. As a matter of fact, Chapter 4 in the Plan for Conservation Development focused specifically on that. And in the Plan for Conservation Development in Chapter 4 focused on housing, it spoke to a couple of action items that we as a city strive to achieve. And one of those is creating a housing plan. And within that plan, ensuring that there's an affordable housing plan that identifies what type of housing we need, what the affordability rate should be for that housing, where the housing should be located, and really a quantitative look at housing need in the city of Norwalk, and then recommendations on how to achieve that level of housing. And we know that we've seen a lot of very healthy development in the city over the last year or so, and we anticipate that to continue. And so we're really excited to be able to not only achieve one of the goals that was identified by the community in the 3 years of outreach that we did for the POCD, but also even more so put a plan into place that will really set the pathway for our success in being able to ensure that we are striving for and getting closer to be able to offer additional affordable housing units for those residents who are living in Norwalk and would like to live in Norwalk. So I will pass it over to Steve Kleppen, our Director of Planning and Zoning, but I did want to offer that overview for the council.
Sure, and I can be very brief because Jessica summed it up very well. Just a little bit of background: the state legislature had regulations on the books about municipalities having to provide an affordable housing plan. That was on the books, I think, since 2017. But there was, as I think I had summarized in my memo, there really wasn't any guidance available on what that plan should be about, what should be included, what steps were. And then they amended the legislation to require that the plans had to be completed by June of 2022, but did not provide any additional guidance on what should be included in the plan. So there was a mad dash from municipalities to try and comply. There were several avenues that they sought. Some tried to do the plan on their own. Some partnered with the regional councils of government, and some hired consultants to put the plans together. In the meantime, there was a state commission forum to kind of look at land use practice in the state and see how that's affecting not only development, but also, things like affordable housing. And there was a commission of that group set up that specifically looked at affordable housing and what should be in those affordable housing plans. And they actually evaluated all the affordable housing plans that were submitted to the state. And by and large, the grades that they gave, they didn't single out any particular municipalities, but they were not very favorable on the plan submitted. And a lot of that, though, was due to recognition that there wasn't any guidance from the state. So that group also put out state guidance. So while all that was going on, we decided that it was probably best to just wait until there was some clarification on what should be included in the plan, as opposed to just putting a document together that really didn't satisfy the needs of the community. So we kind of held out a little bit and put an RFP out. We only received one response. Obviously we would have liked to have gotten more responses than the one we received, but we were happy with the firm that we got. And through waiting, we were able to modify the scope of work that we, have agreed to in order to satisfy the requirements in the draft document that the state commission has put together. So pending approval from the council, we're ready to go to contract with AKRF. They'll begin work over the next couple of months, either through, a lot of background data, because this is going to be a very data-driven project, and then working with a subcommittee that's formed to look at this. So those are really the next steps as we see it.
Thank you, Ms. Vanishek and Mr. Kleppen. Do we have any, Mr. Arkides? I see your hand is raised.
No, I was just thought you were calling for a vote. Apologize.
Oh, you were jumping it, right? Any questions or comments? I just have one brief comment. I think this is great, but there also needs to be a housing study for other types of housing. I know that there's a complete lack of housing for those between 35 and 65 per year. And I think we really need to start taking a look at that as well. Mr. Goldstein.
No, all I was going to say was I thought that was something we actually helped approve tonight already on the consent calendar. That was the Urban Land Institute study on the total housing study issue.
Yeah, I think it says affordable housing, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but between 35,000 and 65,000 per year in salary, I think that's a real need here as well. Mr. Bedoli.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm logged in as I'm logged in as Mr. Bedoli.
I know Brian has a deep voice. You don't sound like him at all.
Thinking, wow, Brian really jumped on that one quick. So you're absolutely right. There is a secondary item under finance, which is to allocate $80,000 in ARPA funding to be able to hold a 3-day housing forum, which we are looking to work with ULI as a vendor on that. So the item on your agenda this evening is for $80,000 to be set aside for the ARPA funding to be able to go through an advisory service panel. And then at your next meeting, you'll actually be able to see the item on your agenda to allocate that $80,000 through a sole source procurement through to ULI. So you will see that at your next meeting as well, just to be able to connect the vendor to that funding. But we are extremely excited because we have this amazing opportunity to be able to look at not only the quantitative side, the affordable housing plan side, but also a qualitative side where we're looking to be able to hold interviews with stakeholders and work with the community to identify the different housing ranges and bandwidths that are needed in the city of Norwalk, and to be able to help us build best practices and recommendations that we can put in place here in the city of Norwalk so that we're addressing all of those bands of housing. And so this is really an all-encompassing, all-inclusive, holistic look at housing, although the affordable housing plan piece that Steve is speaking to is the $120,000 for AKRF.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all.
Great, thank
Next
you.
item on the agenda is 7D3, Ms. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. D1. 7D1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into.
7D3, I'm sorry.
3, sorry, as I read it, I realized that was not it. 7.3, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Finch Turf Inc. in an amount not to exceed $28,499 for the sole source purchase of Rexidem Birdie Top 1800 artificial turf field groomer from account number noted. How did I do, David?
Missy, I was just going to say, you're trying to outdo him.
I'm practicing. I've only got 2.
So Ms. Young moves it. Comments or discussion? Ms. Shanahan.
Yes, I was the person who asked that this item come off consent because I'd like to take this opportunity to remind my council mates in the city of Norwalk as to the dangers posed by artificial turf fields. These fields have many dangerous features. There are studies showing increased concussion and ACL tears on turf fields as compared to grass fields. There are data showing much higher temperatures on the field that endanger the health of athletes playing on them. But by far and away, the greatest danger that artificial fields pose to all of us, whether we play on the fields or not, is to our drinking water. There is not a turf field constructed today that does not have high levels of PFAS embedded in its materials. That includes the so-called new and improved fields that have no crumb rubber infields. This PFAS leaches immediately upon installation, and the leaching increases as the fields age. Why do we care? PFAS is what scientists call a forever chemical. It does not break down. It never goes away. It doesn't go away in the environment, and it doesn't go away in our bodies. This past June, the Environmental Protection Agency issued health advisories that said these chemicals are much more hazardous to human health than scientists had originally thought. And they're probably much more dangerous, even at levels of thousands of times lower than what was previously believed. Just today, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Michael Regan said that PFAS contamination is, and I quote, one of the most pressing environmental and public health concerns in the modern world. He went on to say that the agency chose these chemicals to regulate because the agency has the clearest science about their adverse impact on human health. I challenge this council, mayor, his administration to do the research, to understand the risk to our city's drinking water, and to avoid assuming this huge potential liability by installing artificial fields anywhere close to our drinking water, so that we risk contaminating our drinking water in any way. So this is a long way of saying I'll be voting against buying a tool to groom turf fields. It seems a bit like buying an ashtray when you're trying to stop smoking.
Thank you, Ms. Shanahan. Any further discussion? Ms. Alterman.
I just want to say thank you to Ms. Shanahan for bringing that to attention. I echo her thoughts and feel exactly the same way.
Thank you. Mr. Hooverman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I thank you, Councilperson Shanahan, as well for bringing that up. I'll be a no vote on this as well. The last time that we voted on turf fields, I abstained and said at that time that I would vote no for any further issues regarding turf fields. And a groomer to me is part of that. So I will be a no vote tonight.
Thank you. I think I saw Miss Revolus with her hand up.
You did, but I was trying to remove the babiness behind me. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I do appreciate Councilwoman Shanahan's information and in raising this. I'm going to be a no for this, but and on top of that, doing continuous research on it, just a little bit concerned. There's several things that I think we do that we want to do better for our community, but causing harm to for the long haul. And I'm a big fan of the long haul of Norwalk and thinking of ourselves when it comes to housing our water in a more generational look. So I will be a no.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know several residents in Norwalk have raised concerns about this item, the artificial turf fields. Most recently, Norwalk resident Diane Lauricello had sent out a communication indicating an opportunity to talk about turf fields. And I would like to invite Mr. Sowers to share some of his experience and expertise as it relates to this particular area, because I know it is a sensitive area, and we are taking it extremely serious. And but you know, we do depend on the data, and we depend on the expertise. So I welcome Mr. Sowers to share some of his thoughts.
Mr. Sowers.
Hello, can you hear me?
We
have
can.
a lot of hard time sometimes with the microphone. Tonight, we're not voting on installing any synthetic turf. What we're voting on today is to maintain the millions of dollars that we put in thus far. We've put in millions of dollars into these fields, and we can't just let them go. It's more dangerous not to maintain these fields as to let them go. So we're not voting on installing another field. We're voting on maintaining what we spent millions of dollars on. And we started discussing this last year as a way of maintaining them longer. You know, we're not prepared tonight to really go into the other side of the argument on turf synthetic fields, but we are working with some consultants that have the other view, and so we will be prepared to, as Mr. Burnett said, we will be prepared as Ms. Lauricello wanted us to actually plan a special meeting where we can hear both sides of, and maybe even the middle side of the argument. We do know that there are solutions to disposal, that they're working on zero disposal waste, and we'll be getting a report on that. My experience with synthetics are that crumb rubber was the most controversial part of synthetic fields. In Seattle, before I came here, we had installed about 32 synthetic fields, and they are in the midst of actually installing 3 more as we speak. I think the first, within 5 years, we had eliminated crumb rubber for a more neutral feel. And so we use cork. We don't use, in Seattle, they use cork now. My intention has been to vacuum up that from rubber. And we're working with a organization that is working on disposable, free disposable waste, so zero waste. So we're looking at that. But my intention is to, with the fields we have, I'm not talking about the future, I'm talking about right now, the fields we have, to try and vacuum up the chrome rubber and refill it with a substance that is not as controversial. And in Seattle, we use cork. There's other things they use, shell. So that's what we're looking at now, and we will be prepared to address that in a special meeting. But tonight we're talking about maintaining millions of dollars that we've already spent, and if we're just going to throw it away, I don't think that's really responsible. We don't know right now whether or not the outcome's going to be to keep doing synthetic field. There's a lot of other economic reasons. There's capacity issues. There's play. There's also a side of the argument where grass fields actually contribute as much injuries as or more than synthetic fields do. So there's other sides of the argument that we need to hear. Tonight we're talking about maintaining millions of dollars that we've invested. And so we had in our budget last year, we planned on buying this machine. We know that it's been stalled by out there by, it's really hard to get things purchased because of COVID. And so we now have a vendor that we can get the truck and the machine. And so that's what we are here tonight to say, let's maintain what we have. That's what we're looking at tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Stowers. Any further, Ms. Young?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as we kind of shared, and we've been talking about these fields, artificial turfs, for as long as I've been on the council, I'm sure there've been more conversations before then. I think, as Mr. Stowers said, this is a piece of equipment to maintain what we have, and we need to move forward and do that. And I think we really need to have some sort of balanced conversation about what what our fields will look like in the city of Norwalk to accommodate all of the programming and all of the folks who want to use our fields. We don't want to turn anyone away, but we also have to be mindful of the carcinogens or things that could possibly happen. I don't think that we've heard any real hard and true facts on either side, and I could be wrong, but I also know that last night during our conversations, Councilwoman Shanahan shared with me that it wasn't just the crumb rubber, but the PFAS on the blades of the grass, so that are of concern. I think that these are things that will change with time. But as it stands right now, I don't think we should be looking at going all one way or all the other way. This has to be a balanced conversation. And we need to do it. We should have done it a while ago, because we've got a lot of champions in the city for this to happen. And so that we become more environmentally friendly. But I think we need to move this item forward so that we can maintain our fields. I mean, it's just, that's where we are right now. And I thank Robert and Ken for always listening to folks, who have, who want to share and express their concerns for safety, which everyone should be concerned. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Ms. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say I agree with Ms. Young on this. I want to thank Ms. Shanahan very much for bringing this issue so strongly to us. And for me, the biggest concern, of course, is the PFAS. And I really want to thank you, Ms. Shanahan, for bringing that awareness moving forward, particularly the Broad River location, which is near a watercourse. I think that it's something we really, really have to think of. But as Mr. Stowers has pointed out, we have spent millions of dollars on these turf fields, and we do need to maintain them. We do want them to last as long as possible. So I think that we just, need to do what we need to do to maintain what we have and to move forward with, gaining more information that as we can, especially concerning is the PFAS. So that's something that's been on my mind quite a lot. So thanks again for that information, Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any further comment or discussion? Seeing none, because this is a divided vote, I believe, Ms. Dixon, would you do a roll call vote? You're on mute.
That's okay. Mr. Burnett,
Yes.
Mr. Goldstein,
Yes.
Ms. Najolski Eichner,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Uvelman,
Nay.
Ms. Revoluz, Ms. Revoluz,
Sorry, buttons, no.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Kites,
Yes.
Ms. Alterman,
No.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 yeses and 1, 2, 3, 4 noes.
Thank
So
you.
the item passes.
The motion passes. Thank you. Ms. Young, the next item. You're on mute. Our famous new.
I know, my gosh. I'm not going to do that anymore. I can only do that one time.
I do it all the time.
D4, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into an agreement with MGT for a study and analysis of the city of Norwalk, Connecticut's Recreation and Parks Department fees and charges, and to recommend a fees and charges policy for an amount not to exceed $61,550 from account numbers noted. From ARPA account numbers noted.
Do you wish to make further comment? Did you move this forward?
We have Mr. Stowers here to speak to this item.
Mr. Stowers?
Yeah, I noticed when I came here, I noticed that we didn't really have a fee policy or a model costing policy to really intelligently set our fees, nor did we have a revenue policy that distinguished general public activity from individual advantage activities. So I also noticed that from my background, which is extensive in revenue, running the Seattle Aquarium that was basically dependent on revenues. That, I seen the need right away for a policy on revenues. And as many fees as we have about 52 fees that actually will go through facility related fees. And then we have a number as many that are program activity fees. And then we have the marina and moorage fees. And, a lot of departments, in fact, when I first came to the department, it was kind of a guess about what they should charge, or they would compare themselves to cities that surrounded them, which may not have the same markets that they have. So being experienced in this field of looking at fees in an empirical way, in terms of having an elasticity study, a market demand study, this is what brought to the mayor a year ago that I wanted to do. Also talked to the finance director, who was really in favor of this, and the budget manager. So finally, we had the funds to contract with a firm that has experience in this area of market demand. And so this will it result in a revenue policy. Also, the deliverables are such that we'll end up with a cost recovery model that will allow us to choose and try to determine what percentage of recovery that we want to be at. It'll be good for our budget talks. We'll also end up with a quantitative and qualitative surveys, focus groups with communities to determine what really the market will bear in this economy. Also, the parks and recreation is really an industry. It's a worldwide industry, and there's recreational economists that talk about fee setting and equity pricing, and so that's what we were trying to arrive at. What does this market really what does the market really bear? And then of the range, where are we comfortable in charging? And so this study will give us that information that the council and the mayor can look at some real empirical data that they can choose which fees that are maybe appropriate for the times. So we'll also end up with a revenue study, a revenue policy after this, but we'll also end up with a range of pricing that will be a lower range depending on the demand of how many participants you may lose at the lower range or the middle range or the higher range. But it will be a study that will give us empirical evidence. These studies in my past have been very, 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 very successful. I'll give you one example, and I actually have the study with me. I brought. We did a study of our Japanese gardens in Seattle. We did an empirical, same kind of study we're doing here, and we were generating it's a small garden in our large arboretum on Lake Washington in Seattle. We were generating about $250,000 a year out of there. Small garden and revenue. And after this, we sat down and we looked at this empirical study, and we picked the middle range. And that next year, we made $750,000, almost a $500,000 increase in 1 year, without any loss in participation. And that's what I think that when you're comparing, cities to cities, you have to make sure that you're actually comparing a city that's really a peer city. For instance, San Francisco, you can't compare with Oakland, even though it's across the bay. It's more comparable to San Diego because of its cost of living and its demographics. And so one of the things in this study, we'll learn what our peer cities are throughout the nation in terms of demographics and economic variables. But they'll take all this information and they'll deliver it to a final report that will give us what their recommended fee structure is for us, what their recommended revenue policy is for us going forward, probably with some kind of escalation clause. But this is needed. It's really a companion piece to the master plan. And I wanted to do it separate from the master plan so I'd have more objectivity. But it's a companion piece. And as some of you have followed the result of the master plan thus far, one of the things that is revealing in the master plan is that our residents have a stronger urge to pay user fees rather than taxes. And so, and this will be the outcome of our master plan. So it jives at this time to look at user fees more closely. And so that's what this study will do. Any raise in fees will still have to come to you. There'll still be, it'll be a recommendation that the mayor and the finance director will look at. But everything still has to come to the council to be passed. So we're not going to bypass you on any way. So that's what this study is going to do. There's a consultant, MGT, and they've done a lot of studies around the country. The studies I've looked at that they've done is out of one is Kirkland, Washington, and they have a whole host of Reno, Las Vegas. These are the studies that are comparable to ours, and they're in that same price range as ours. But they in the study, in the background information I sent you, you'll see all the studies that they've done that are comparable to ours, and you'll see that the pricing is pretty comparable. Ours is even lower. So anyway, I'm ready to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stowers. Any comments, Ms. Young?
Mayor, so Robert, Mr. Stowers, is this also a requirement for our accreditation, or how does that help us? Does it put us in a more favorable position to have all of this sort of data compiled?
It is a requirement that we have some kind of pricing model on how we set our fees, and we don't have that. I think the ultimate outcome is to try to have equity pricing so that we can end up with scholarships for people that are for youth and families that can't afford our activities. And one way to do that is keep everything free, but you can't maintain it if you keep everything free. The other way to do it is just to make more money. So you have more money for scholarships and access. And so that's what equity pricing among recreational economists, that's what they believe. That's kind of the new wave in pricing recreation activities.
Thank you, Mr. Stowers. Ms. Najolski-Eichner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you very much for this explanation, Mr. Stowers. It's certainly helpful to understand. And I certainly have no objection to raising our fees. I think that it costs a lot to maintain. And so I'm all for a thoughtful, strategic approach on this. I think that I was a little surprised by the price of this study. I think that if you're looking, even at other things we're approving today, we're getting an entire citywide housing plan for $80,000. We're getting, a comprehensive and a citywide affordable housing plan for $120,000. $60,000 seems high to me for what is ultimately a pretty narrow study on a pretty narrow issue. And so I'm trying to understand, and again, particularly because this, the goal of this is to raise revenues for the city. I'm wondering whether the amount that we're expending on it, then, eats significantly into the additional revenues potentially raised. And so I'm just trying to understand the cost benefit here because the price does seem high to me.
Yeah, this is a guide that will end up generating a lot more money than we put in. It's a guide that will allow us over years, and we may not, you probably have to do this every 5 years or whatever, but it'll be well worth the money we're spending, and it's the cost of doing these kind of studies. We're not comparing to cities. We're doing it's an empirical market demand study, and those are done by consultants that are experienced in this area, and that's what it costs. And I've done many of these. I've done them at the aquarium every 4 or 5 years. I've done them as the assistant financial director at Parks, and I've done them as the deputy director. So this is what they cost, but the return is large, and it will benefit us over a long period of time. Even though it might seem narrow, it's going to benefit us over a long period of time. So I think it's well worth it.
Do you have
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, by all means, go ahead.
No, you still have the floor. I'm sorry.
Do you have a prediction for, or is there any kind of guarantee for this in terms of return on investment, or the amount of increased revenue necessary to offset the costs of this and, also move forward on our objectives? And are there alternate ways that this study could be conducted for less, or excuse me, are there alternate ways that a less costly study could nonetheless achieve the objectives that you're trying to get at here? In terms of, again, of having some basis for raising fees. I'm just trying to understand what alternatives to this level of cost.
It's been my experience that the things that we've done here, that I've seen we've done, comparing, Norwalk to Fairfield, or, doing those comparative cost studies haven't really resulted in anything, because the markets are different. It's like oranges and apples. What is expensive is when you're doing these empirical studies, you're doing focus groups. So they're organizing focus groups. There's incentives for focus groups to come out. They're doing surveys, so they're spending money, and they're trying to get at the most common denominator, where people will agree upon what the payment is. But there's not a cheaper way that I found to achieve the results that I know this will achieve. I can't predict, because that's why it's empirical science. I can just tell you, it's been my experience that there's significant increases in revenue without a lot of complaints or pushback, because they're getting at what people won't tell you. They're getting at what people will actually pay. And so they're having discussions with focus groups, they're doing surveys. So all that costs money. And so there was a line item in the report that I sent you that detailed out what they were doing and what the costs were.
Thank you, Mr. Sauer.
Ms. Young, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mr. Josie Eichner?
Oh, no, I'm finished. Thank you,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sauer.
Ms. Young?
Oh, one last question, Mayor. Are these paid with ARPA funds? Is that what I'm reading, or is that incorrect? So these
Yeah,
are
they are.
ARPA dollars.
Yes, they are.
ARPA dollars.
So moving forward, if there is another study, we'd have to find the funding from the city.
And hopefully it will come out of the funding.
Okay.
We are going before the council to do a special meeting on fees. We have a public hearing, but I can tell you that, and we're talking about whether they're facility fees or activity fees. But I can tell you, we raised the summer camps about by just $10 this year, and in 1 week we're almost at $400,000. We just opened up. So I'm expecting us to get to a $500,000, maybe 600,000 before our camps. Last year we made 400,000. So people are willing to pay, but how do you ask the right questions to get the right answers? And these folks are trained to do this. That's what they're trained to do. So it's been my experience. It's gonna have good results.
Further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will, Mr. Kites.
Yes, thanks. It's great we were having, these conversations at council meetings. Thought I'd chime in. Mr. Stowers, I guess if you just keep this in mind moving forward with this study, if we could take a look at, the department's expenses versus revenue, because obviously we don't want to price out residents. I've always been an advocate of out-of-towners paying the premium, obviously, for our beautiful parks and beaches and so forth. But just keeping in mind that, okay, if our expenditures, are this much and our revenues are this much, and if there isn't a huge discrepancy, to perhaps, keep those fees, put that, give the residents and taxpayers that benefit. So I know we're early on in this process, but, during this putting this plan together, keeping that in mind, and I'd personally like to see what the revenues are versus the expenditures, and what those numbers are, because we're not, obviously trying to, raise prices, but and not for the most part need it. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you. Ms. Valadares?
Thank you. So I just want to add one line. I think that you guys already discussed this enough. But what we are trying to do here is we do know that particularly on the operating side, we are really trying to find ways that we can minimize the impact on our residents. And one way of doing that is trying to create some revenue. But we want to do that the right way. And that's why we're going for this study. We don't want to come in front of you and just say we'll need to raise 10% of the fees of the use of the fields or of the some of the recreational activities that we have. We want to be able to raise the fees where we think that people can pay for it. And the most important, to keep the diversity on those programs. And that's why we're engaging this study. And that's why the cost seems a little bit higher, because it's not just a comparison to what the other neighborhood municipalities are doing. We have much more a deep interest on really trying to see who is using, who can afford, and how we can keep the same level of service or better, and also try to make some revenue, take it out from our taxpayers and make the right charge to the right people. That's what this study will bring to us.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Ms. Eichner, Ms. Najilski-Eichner, Ms. Alterman, Mr. Kites, you still have your hand up. Are you opposed or in favor?
No, I'm in favor, Mr. Mayor.
I'm in favor as well. I just couldn't get the button.
Okay, Ms. Ayers, I saw your hand. Were you in favor as well?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So I believe, if I'm correct, let me just recap. Ms. Najilski-Eichner, you voted negative.
Correct.
Okay, so we have 11 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion carries. I do not think there's any other business to come before the council this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
I was waiting. All in favor?
Good night, everyone.
Are there anyone opposed? Thank you again for your time. Have a good evening,
Night.
everybody.